Hi, my name is Emily Cox, and I'm going to be presenting the Communication Privacy Management Theory, which is based on the research of Sandra Petronio. Let's look at an overview of Communication Privacy Management Theory, or CPM for short. CPM explains the process that people use to manage the relationship between concealing and revealing private information. And keep in mind that private information is not always information about ourselves. It can be someone else's private information that they have disclosed to us. CPM theory seeks to answer the question, how do we decide what and how much to disclose to others? Deciding what to reveal and what to keep confidential is not a straightforward decision, but rather a continual balancing act. We have to constantly balance what we reveal and what we keep to ourselves. We don't want to disclose everything, but we don't want to keep everything to ourselves either. Both disclosure and privacy have potential risks and rewards for us as well as for those with whom we interact. Concerning CPM, Petronio states, we try to weigh the demands of the situation with our needs and those of others around us. Privacy has importance for us because it lets us feel separate from others. It gives us a sense that we are the rightful owners of information about us. There are risks that include making private disclosures to the wrong people, disclosing at a bad time, telling too much about ourselves, or compromising others. On the other hand, disclosure can give enormous benefits. We may increase social control, validate our perspectives, and become more intimate with our relational partners when we disclose. The balance of privacy and disclosure has meaning because it is vital to the way we manage our relationships. The CPM theory has evolved over the years. It began as a micro-theory having limited boundaries, which were confined to privacy management within a marital dyad. But it evolved into a macro-theory having extensive boundaries, which expanded to include a variety of interpersonal relationships, including groups and organizations. The name changed from Communication Boundary Management Theory in 1991 to Communication Privacy Management Theory in 2002. Petronio believed that the new name better reflected the focus on private disclosures. And in 2004, Petronio wrote an article about CPM which was subtitled Please Stand By, indicating that the theory continues to evolve. The assumptions of CPM are that humans are choice makers, humans are rule makers and rule followers, humans' choices and rules are based on a consideration of others as well as the self, relational life is characterized by change, and contradiction is the fundamental fact of relational life. A couple of important key terms relevant to CPM are private information and private disclosures. Private information is information about things that matter deeply to a person, and private disclosures is the process of communicating that private information to others. In CPM, Petronio prefers to use the term private disclosures as opposed to self-disclosures. There are a couple of ways these terms differ in meaning. One way is that private disclosure puts more emphasis on the personal content of the disclosure than does self-disclosure. In doing this, CPM gives more credibility to what is considered private. Another reason for using private disclosure as opposed to self-disclosure is that CPM does not consider that disclosures are only about the self. CPM extends the communicative process to embrace multiple levels of disclosure, including self and group. Now we'll discuss the principles of CPM. Here I have a chart to give you an overview of each one. I'll discuss each one in further detail in the following slides. Take note that each principle builds on the previous one. Principle 1 is private information ownership. People believe they own information about themselves and they can manage it however they want. Although most people do feel that they own their private information, sometimes that's just their perspective. Though people may claim that they have complete ownership of their private information, that claim can be contradicted. For instance, people who post private information online may believe it's still their private information, but that's not necessarily the case once others have access to it. Principle 2 is private information control. People believe that because they own the private information about themselves, they can choose how they want to control that information, and usually this is done by developing boundaries. The boundary metaphor makes the point that there is a line between being public and private. On one side of the boundary, people keep private information to themselves, and on the other side of the boundary, people reveal some private information to others. Boundaries usually change throughout our lives. When we're children, we have less restrictive boundaries and tend to share more information with people, but as we get older, we develop more restrictive boundaries and typically become more guarded and less inclined to share private information with others. Principle 3 is private information rules. People make decisions about controlling the private information they own based on rules. Rule development is guided by people's decision criteria for revealing or concealing private information. CPM theory states that there are 5 decision criteria that are used for developing privacy rules. We're going to look at each criterion in further detail. Cultural criteria depend on the norms for privacy and openness in a culture. Individuals are guided in their own expectations for privacy by the values they learned in their cultures. An example is that the U.S. favors more openness in relational communication than Japan does. Gendered criteria refer to the differences that may exist between men and women in drawing privacy boundaries. It seems that men and women are socialized to develop different rules for how privacy and disclosure operate. Women tend to be more disclosive than men. Motivational criteria refer to the motives that people have for disclosing or concealing private information. Some motives include control, manipulation, power, self-clarification, relational closeness, and reciprocity. For example, if someone discloses a great deal to you, you might feel more motivated to disclose to them because of reciprocity. Contextual criteria refers to the social environment or physical setting we're in. A disclosure might be prompted by the things we've experienced throughout the day. For example, if a person is stressed or upset due to experiences at work, they might want to disclose more information because of how they feel. Environment also plays a role in our decision to disclose or conceal private information. Some environments invite disclosure, whereas others do not. And a personal example of this is if I'm at home talking with my mom, I'm much more inclined to share private information with her than I am when I'm in my professional work setting. The last criteria is risk-benefit criteria, and this refers to how people evaluate the risks relative to the benefits of disclosing or keeping quiet. Principle 4 is private information co-ownership and guardianship. When someone shares private information with another person, the information becomes co-owned. And this also relates to boundaries that we create. To the right, there's a diagram depicting personal and collective boundaries. When we keep private information to ourselves, the boundary is called a personal boundary. When we share private information with someone else, we create collective boundaries, and this happens when our information becomes co-owned. Co-ownership is regulated through boundary linkage, boundary ownership rights, and boundary permeability. I'll define those 3 terms on the following slide. Boundary linkage is the connections that form boundary alliances between people. For example, when I tell someone my private information, we are linked in a privacy boundary. Boundary ownership is the rights and privileges accruing to co-owners of private information. Once you disclose private information to someone, they have rights and privileges to it as well. And these rules regarding your private information need to be stated clearly with whomever you're sharing the private information with. Boundary permeability is the extent to which information is able to pass through a boundary, and this is when you have thick or thin boundaries. When access to private information is closed, the boundaries are thick. When access to the information is open, the boundaries are thin. The last principle is Principle 5, which is private information boundary turbulence. When the privacy rules break down or when people make mistakes in enacting them, turbulence occurs. This occurs when the rules of boundary coordination are unclear or when people's expectations for privacy management come into conflict with one another. However, when turbulence occurs, people generally try to make adjustments in an attempt to reduce the turbulence and achieve coordination. Next, I'm going to share a video clip with you which I believe accurately depicts communication privacy management in a humorous way.
Hi. Penny. Yeah, FYI, the hot water is inadequate on machine 2, so colors only. And 4 is still releasing the fabric softener too early in the cycle, so I'd avoid using that for your delicates.
Thanks.
Oh, good Lord. Why don't you just take your clothes down to the river and beat them with a rock?
Sheldon, can I ask you a question?
I would prefer that you not, but I won't go so far as to forbid it.
All right, I heard yes, so... Okay, here's my question. Has Leonard ever dated, a regular girl?
Well, I assume you're not referring to digestive regularity. Because I've come to learn that such inquiries are inappropriate.
No, I meant, has he ever been involved with someone who wasn't a brainiac?
Oh. Well, a few years ago, he did go out with a woman who had a PhD in French literature.
How is that not a brainiac?
Well, for one thing, she was French. For another, it was literature.
So, do you think that if Leonard and I keep dating, he'll eventually get bored with me?
That depends.
On what?
Do you have a working knowledge of quantum physics?
No.
Do you speak Klingon?
No.
You know any card tricks?
Okay. I get it. Leonard has no business being involved with a waitress/actress who felt so insecure that she lied to him about finishing community college.
Why would you lie about that?
Well, he was going on and on about this college and that grad school, and I didn't want him to think I was some kind of stupid loser.
You thought the opposite of stupid loser was community college graduate?
There are a lot of successful people in this country who are community college graduates.
Yeah, but you were neither.
Right. Okay, look, this is between you and me. You cannot tell Leonard any of this.
You're asking me to keep a secret?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, but you would have had to express that desire before revealing the secret, so that I could choose whether or not I wanted to accept the covenant of secret keeping. You can't impose a secret on an ex post facto basis.
What?
Secret keeping is a complicated endeavor. One has to be concerned not only about what one says, but about facial expressions, autonomic reflexes. When I try to deceive, I myself have more nervous tics than a Lyme disease research facility. It's a joke. It relies on the homonymic relationship between tic, the blood-sucking arachnid, and tic, the involuntary muscular contraction. I made it up myself.
Okay, look, if Leonard finds out that I lied, I will absolutely die of embarrassment.
Physiologically impossible.
Oh, Sheldon, please. Look, I'm asking you as a friend.
So you're saying that friendship contains within it an inherent obligation to maintain confidences?
Well, yeah.
Interesting. Gee, one more question, and perhaps I should have led with this. When did we become friends?
To summarize and conclude my presentation on CPM, people believe they own and have a right to control their private information by setting boundaries. People control their private information through the use of personal privacy rules. When others are told or given access to a person's private information, they become co-owners of that information. Co-owners of private information need to negotiate mutually agreeable privacy rules about telling others. And when co-owners of private information don't effectively negotiate and follow mutually held privacy rules, boundary turbulence is the likely result. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you now have a better understanding of communication privacy management theory.